Morning guys. Today on Get Kids Woodworking episode number 9, I am going to show you how to make a sanding block. They're pretty easy, they don't take long to make, and they last a long time. The first thing you need is a piece of 2x4 that is 4.5 inches long. This is the same size as a half sheet of sandpaper. Or you can either buy the half sheets at the hardware store, or you can buy the full sheets that are, I believe, 9x11 and cut them in half. So anyways, the first thing we need to do is take our block and we're going to mark a line near the middle on both ends, and then on the end grain of the board, we're going to mark a line. So you will end up with a line that looks like this. What we're going to do is we are going to run our saw down that, create a little kerf, a little groove, and then we will put a wedge in that once you put your paper around it. There you can see the kerf that I cut. Once you have your kerf cut in your block, you're going to want to take your cork. I bought this roll. It's like 12 inches by 36 inches long, and it's a little under 1/8 of an inch thick. I bought it at the hardware store this morning, and it was like $5. As you can tell, it likes to roll up, so you're going to want to either let it flatten out for a couple days, or do like I'm doing here and just kind of clamp it down to the table so it is nice and flat. I will add that this is where you want an adult to help you. If you trust your kids with a pocket knife, that would work. But if you don't trust your kids with knives, you probably ought to jump in and help a little bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut a piece of this that is 4.5 inches by 9 inches, and that will wrap around our block. So you take your tri-square, I take the ruler out of it, and come in 9 inches, make a mark. Okay, and then make a couple marks so you can see them. And then make a couple more marks at 4.5 inches. And then all you got to do is draw a line It may be kind of hard for you guys to see this. Pencil line on the cork. Scissors would work to cut this as well. I just don't keep a pair close. So you could use scissors to cut it. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and cut this with the razor knife. Because that's what I have handy. My plant's kind of in my way. Okay. Alright, there we have it. We have a piece of cork that is 4.5 inches by 9 inches. Once you have the cork cut, you can kind of wrap it around your block. Chances are it will try to crack, and that's fine, because what we're going to do is we're going to go back and trim everything up and sand everything a little bit anyway. So if it cracks, that's fine. You can put one side on, one side of the cork on one side of the block, and then for the other side, you just go around and leave a little extra hanging over, and go ahead and wrap it around. And then you may have to cut it. If it doesn't crack, you may have to cut it. Just hold the block down and run your knife or scissors, or you could draw a line and cut it without the block. I just like to use the block as my clamp. Okay. So then you end up with two sides that have cork on them. Now, how we're going to attach this is we are going to excuse me, we are going to glue this in place using wood glue. So you're going to want to clamp it to a table, or use a couple other boards and kind of sandwich it in there to get good even pressure everywhere across the block and the cork to make sure you get good adhesion. So I'm just going to lather up, slather up, goop up one side of the board. Make sure you get the edges real good. That's the one place you don't want it lifting off at all. And then you take a piece of your cork and you put it on there. And then you're going to lather up the other side. One thing I'll mention is you want to use cork that is unsealed. If you use sealed cork, it won't absorb the wood glue and it will not stay in place. Okay, now that I've got that in place, I'm going to take another chunk of 2x4 and put on top of that and clamp everything up. We'll let that set for 30 minutes or so, and then we'll come back and do the next piece. Alright guys, I don't know what you were doing while the glue was drying. I took the time to clean up the shop a little bit. It's a never-ending process. Okay, so you got your block and it's got glued cork on it. Now, if you have an adult help you, go ahead and trim off the remaining cork that's overhanging. I like to leave one square edge on this corner and then have a rounded edge over here. So this is where you can just kind of trim down. Trim down the cork to have a nice edge that will the other thing you can do is take a piece of sandpaper and go ahead and just smooth that out. So my block ends up looking something like this. Okay? The next step, I'm going to go ahead and sand that just a little bit. The next step is to take the small piece of cork and do the same thing on it. Glue it down and then clamp it up. Alright guys, now that we've got that final piece of cork glued on, I can show you that we have 3 sides. I went ahead and trimmed this. I like to keep that rounded. I like to keep one square edge and one rounded edge. So now the beauty of this little sanding block is you take a shim. I don't know if you can see that. It's just slightly beveled, not much. Doesn't have to be beveled much. I just grab a little piece of something I've trimmed off and something that'll fit in there and wedge it in place. Not too tight, but you don't want it to be loose. Then you take your paper and wrap it around your block like so. Kind of tuck both edges in. And you could use it like that, but the paper tends to want to move and come loose. So then you take your little wedge like that, give it a couple whaps on the table, and it holds it tight. And that wedge actually pulls the paper in tight too. When they're brand new, that wedge is pretty tight. As you use it, it will loosen up and become easier to use. But anyways, that gives you a sanding block, keeps the paper tight. You have 2 pretty good sized flat edges, a smaller, a narrower edge, a rounded edge, and a square edge. Anyways, that's my favorite sanding block. When they're new, they're kind of tough to get the wedges back out. You may have to take a screwdriver and put in there and pry it back up. But like I said, great little sanding block. If it's me, I make 2 or 3 of these at a time. I keep coarse paper on one, a medium grit, like say a 60 or an 80, generally an 80, a 150, and a 220 blocks. A bunch of my blocks have numbers written on them, so that I know just by looking, okay, that's my 80 grit paper, this one's my 150, and then the next one's 220. So anyways, that's that. Hope you find this useful. Thanks, and we'll see you next time. Take care.